Okay, welcome everybody to the medieval research seminar. This is the first session of the seminar during this academic year 2013 and 2014, and I think that we are in a very friendly atmosphere. So I will give you some information which may be of interest both for some of you who attend this seminar for the first time and also for our guest Todd Michelson-Ambelang and Venkat Mani, both of them from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I think that many people, and here I am not making distinctions between whether MA students, BA students, doctoral students, or professors who work on medieval studies, either from the School of History, the School of Languages, philosophy, etc., felt quite uncomfortable because the university lacked a common forum for all of us to share our interest in medieval literatures and culture in general term. Pablo Ordaz, who is a doctoral student here at the School of History, specifically in art history, had the idea of creating this seminar. And I thought it was a wonderful idea which should be given support because, being myself a medievalist by training, my thesis, my dissertation was written under the supervision of the late Professor Alan Diamond at the Queen Mary College, University of London, and he was the founder of a seminar on Hispano medieval studies, which attracted scholars from all over the world. And my dissertation was, I would say, 100% indebted to both Alan Diamond and his seminar. So we had, once Pablo had this idea, I thought it was a wonderful one, and we started last academic year. And the idea is having guest scholars who work on medieval studies, invite them so they can share with us their ongoing research, and at the same time using this forum not only for advanced researchers, but also for BA, MA, and doctoral students, so they can present their ongoing research, ongoing papers, and learn from each other. Today, I think the opportunity of having Todd here is extremely important for this university. Doesn't provide training in several fields which are of key importance for medieval studies. One of these fields, and so much so in the case of the Iberian Peninsula, would be Arabic and Hebrew studies, which are not taught at this university. We have a very important section on Romance studies and on medieval Latin. But we have no specialist in Northern European literature, especially in Scandinavian literatures. So I think that this is a very exciting and important opportunity for all of us. As I told you, Todd Michelson-Ambelang is affiliated to the Department of Scandinavian Studies. He received a BA in German from Arizona State University, an MA in Scandinavian Studies, and also an MA in Library and Information Studies. And those of you who have attended his research seminar on Monday morning, I think that we all share the feeling that we have learned so much from him. Now he's in the process of writing his dissertation. His fields of interest are linguistics, etymology, patterns, puzzles, and receptions of the underrepresented in the world. And I think that your talk today, at least some of these fields will be presented in your talk. So as you can see, well, I would say it would be much better for you to read the title and whenever you want.
Okay. Thank you very much, Cesar. And thank you all for coming. I'm excited to have the chance to present this and to have an opportunity to talk with others about what I'm working on. So I'm going to I have a written paper, but I thought it would be kind of more, as the Norwegians say, koselig or cozy, to sit around the table and I kind of present it in a less formal fashion, and then we can kind of discuss it at the end, because I want input as well as to what you're doing in other areas of medieval studies. The title is Research Strategies, Sagas and Þættir in Iceland and the Collection of Terminology. A þáttur, it'll be later on in the thing you'll see it, but this is called a thorp, and it looks like a P with the little hump in the middle. And so that's a th sound, kind of like a Z or a C here in Spain. Same sound. And then there's also an eth, which is a D, which curves over and has a cross through it. And that's like the way that Spanish pronounces D, kind of the sound. So those are the two words, two letters that aren't vowels that sound a little bit different. Anyway, I'm going to start off by discussing how I came into collecting terminology about disability. And this came from a seminar I took with Professor Kirsten Wolf, who's my advisor at the University of Wisconsin-Madison in Scandinavian Studies. And she was trying to find the history of the word grau, which is gray in Old Norse, and trying to figure out if it actually had connotation with it, because it's not actually used in saga literature to mean anything other than old. And so she was trying to figure out if she could, and I think she did a very good job to see if originally grau meant like gray-haired, which meant old, or if how the terminology came to be. So she did huge excerptions of all different colors through dictionaries. There's a dictionary that's being compiled, which I used in my dissertation at the University of Copenhagen, called the Dictionary of Old Norse Prose. And they basically have collected, it's a little bit easier than Latin because Old Norse doesn't have that many manuscripts. So they've gone through and just collected all the words from a specific time period, and words that are not poetic, because poetics are very complicated in saga literature. They use a different language, and so a lot of the words don't have direct representation, and sometimes they don't know what they mean. So anyway, we have the color terminology, and the idea comes from two scholars who wrote in the 70s named Berlin and Kay, and it's trying to find out what natural color terms are. And natural color terms are terms that when you say the word, only the color comes to your mind. And so the examples that I have, first they posit, and it seems to work really well, that there are two kinds of languages. There are languages that work in shades of light and languages that work in colors. In the West, in Europe, all languages work in colors. So you have red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. Whereas there are some languages in Africa, even one of the dialects of the Tamil-speaking people in Tamil Nadu in India use the same words as the people so they're in the western part of Tamil Nadu, and in the eastern part they use colors, so they'd say red, but in the western part they use the same word, but it actually means bright. And so it's the level of brightness, not actually the color as we see color. And so what they say is that all languages start with three colors, actually. You have black and white, and that's where the division happens with the brightness. And then after that you have red. And then after red, you get all of the different other colors. And it actually starts with green and blue, either green or blue, and then it goes to orange, yellow, purple, brown, gray, as we have in English. One of the problems is the term orange also evokes the fruit. So I've used that in English and then in Norwegian and then in Spanish, and the reason for that is they all evoke different concepts. So in Norwegian they use the word orange, and orange means actually just the color orange, but it's taken from a foreign language. It's taken from French, orange. And their word for the fruit is appelsin. But the traditional word in Norwegian for orange is actually rødgul, which means red-yellow. And so it actually, one would not call it a true natural word for color. In Spanish, it's the same thing in the fact that you have naranja, which means the fruit, and you also have the color, or you have anaranjado, which also evokes the idea of the fruit because the word for the fruit is inside of the word. So you can't really, you might know, okay, they're talking about the color, not the fruit, but it still kind of causes confusion. So then I wanted to also include some other languages that have differences so that you can also see those differences. You have light blue, which is goluboy. I don't speak Russian, but or much. And then you have sinny. And you have a difference between light blue and dark blue. One could argue perhaps that it has something to do with the religiosity, in the fact that there's light blue, like in Italian, celeste and blue. Celeste is more celestial blue, so it's the color of Mary, whereas in the dark blue is just the color blue, like maybe the sea or something like that. Also having the sea versus heaven. In Russian, you have those. And then in Hungarian, you have two words for red. And they take it a different way. Both colors can actually exist in the same concept, but they use inanimate and unemotive word, and then an animate and an emotive word. So, and actually I have it here, so I need to fully understand. The Red Sea, Red Square, Red Army, Red Baron, Eric the Red, Red Wine, is vörös, which is the second word up there. So those are animate. Everything is kind of, and it's emotive, the concept of why it's red, because of communism with the Red Square and these kinds of things. Whereas if it's like a mineral or a tree or a fruit, then you would use piros. Japanese is a language that has one color but not the other with the blue and green. Recently the term Midori has come forward, but people will say that Midori is a subset of Aoi, or Ao, which is the root of the word blue. So you have different examples here, and that's all I was trying to do. And so the study that I did was actually in a modern Norwegian book, and looking at the colors that people wore. It's a book called Mysterier, or Mysteries, by an author named Knut Hamsun. He was a Nobel laureate and wrote this at the beginning of the 20th century. So now we're going to go back in time, because I picked this simply because I wanted to work on my Norwegian at the time, and now I'm working on medieval Iceland, and this is my dissertation. And what I found interesting was the kind of duality that exists amongst many different subsets of people in medieval Iceland in saga literature. And so what I first tried to do is to figure out and to define, using other people's ideas and my own, of what a hero is. So you have the young, fertile, active, native-born or Norwegian-born. We're talking about Iceland, but there's a lot of interaction, and these are the settlement sagas. So people are coming from Norway for the most part, or they're bringing their slaves from Ireland or Great Britain and settling on Iceland during that time. So you have heterosexual male, masculine star features, a good fighter, usually fair in complexion and hair. It's considered a little bit negative to be dark, handsome, well-liked without being too nice or gullible, and having no interest in crossing the boundaries established by society. This kind of gave me, I'm a person who looks at pictures, and I think in pictures, so I'll come back to that in just a minute. Then in looking at disabilities, I wanted to provide you with different models of disability studies. There's the moral model, and this is the Christian model. They kind of passed, when you think of the Middle Ages and the association that somebody must have done something wrong for that child to be blind, or what did the mother do? Is she a prostitute, or did she have impure thoughts, or something along those lines? So you have disability comes from a sin or wrongdoing. The loss of one ability means the heightening of another sense or insight. This is also very present in right now, where people will say, oh, this person's blind, he or she must have amazing hearing. Well, yes, they might actually have tuned in their hearing, but if you listen to the amounts of tones that they can listen to, there's no difference. And so there's this philosophy. And so the question that's asked by this model is why or what sin caused a disability, and what ability is heightened. Then you have the medical model, and this came about in the last 2 centuries, where disability is a problem which must be solved, if possible. The medical community is there to solve that problem. And this is the idea that doctors are there to fix problems. So you have, how can we solve the problem to make a person, quote unquote, normal? And that thinks about the normalcy. It also puts judgment on people. So if somebody has a problem that causes them to gain weight or something along those lines, the idea is, well, that person is fat and we have to fix that fat because fat is bad. And so this is that idea that exists so much in society where we want to kind of create normalcy. Then you have the social model, and this one came out in the late 60s. And the idea is that impairment, and I'm using impairment here and not disability, and I'll explain that in just a minute, but impairment is a lack of function. Disability is the reaction of society on impairment, pushing a person out of, quote, normal society. And the question is then, what can society do to stop the disabling the person, and who is impaired? So in this situation, the impairment would be, for example, somebody who's deaf. Now, a person who is deaf is fully capable of taking part in society. They can be educated. They have a subgroup in that they can be educated at deaf schools. They can communicate by writing, and we all have hands. So by refusing, and this is not a judgment at anybody in the table, but by refusing to learn sign language, we are disabling the person because we're not allowing them to enter our part of society. It's the same thing as this building, for example. We have an elevator in the building so that somebody who's disabled or has an impairment in that they cannot walk up the stairs can go up and down. If the Spanish government or the Galician government or whoever it was decided not to put an elevator in and said, I'm sorry, we don't really care about people with impairments, they're disabling that person. So that's the difference between a disability and an impairment. Now, I'm going to put that into the sagas. So, we're going to talk about the sagas and Taitir really quickly. The sagas and Taitir of Icelanders are from the settlement ages, as I said, 900 to 1100 AD, or the Common Era. Iceland became Christian pretty much overnight in the year 1000. So these are before and after people became Christian, and I'll point that out in some of the things that I've observed. Although they have been all written down well after the Christianization. Sagas of Icelanders are long and sometimes epic tales, usually involving a protagonist or a family of protagonists centered around a geographic area in Iceland. Þættir are short moral tales from the same period, and they usually have an extremely religious connotation within the tale. So it's very much like what you would listen to at the fire in the night, and a saga would be told over many months or many weeks, whereas a þáttur would be told at one time. So it's something to tell the kids before they go to bed. The corpus comprises approximately 38 sagas and 49 þættir. That's the ones that are called the sagas and þættir of Icelanders, or the settlement sagas and þættir. They were written down after having been told for about 200 years. So it was about late 1200s, early 1300s when they started to write them down, and they wrote them down in convents and monasteries in Iceland. They describe times before, during, and after the conversion of Iceland to Christianity. So this is what I was talking about as far as graphs. This is how I conceive the idea of what impairment and disability and society in Iceland look like. So you have the others and the outsiders and the idealized and the insiders, and then this area right here. It's not one line, but a series of lines, because I can't pinpoint exactly what is considered where, and that's what I'm trying to do. So this is the beginning stages as well. So you have some examples of people who are outsiders, men behaving womanly. It was considered a grave sin, and this is even before Christianity, for a man to wear a shirt where his nipple showed. That was considered, because women would feed the children with their breasts, it was considered that the man was trying to be a woman by showing his nipple, which is odd because you'd think if they swam, they probably, but anyway. Then you have women behaving manly. Women who had children and were no longer of childbearing age were allowed to dress up as men. So they were allowed to take over companies or trading ships. They were allowed to own land. They had a lot of freedom. But when a woman was of childbearing age, and if her children were still growing, she was not allowed to dress up in men's clothing. Then you have just women in general, and this is under the binary idea that a man is idealized and a woman is not, but as you see it kind of crosses in, there are a few women that are mentioned in the sagas who are considered heroic. So there you have the impaired, and there you have the disabled, and then you have foreigners here. And foreigners are considered, a lot of times you'll see these descriptions and it'll talk about how terrible a person is, and then at the very end you'll find out, oh, they're Swedish, or oh, they're Danish, or Russian, etc., etc. And then you have, over on this side, heroes, Viking traders, and royalty. And they also kind of go toward the otherness, because there are a few people, it's not a perfect science, there are some people that are considered to be outsiders. All right, so now I'm going to start talking about different sagas. So we have Egil from Egil's saga. And Egil was a great warrior. There's been a lot of discussion about what exactly he had. These are very real and true descriptions. And so they believe there has been writing about the fact whether or not he had something called Paget's disease, which is basically where the skull grows and it causes pressure in the brain, because he became very mean and grumpy. And he was also hit over the head with a sword and nothing happened. He was cut, but it didn't kill him, and it didn't wound him in a serious way. And so the thing with me is that I'm a person who follows kind of the middle ground, and I say I don't want to define what he had. I think that's kind of wrong to do, because he's also a fictional character. Obviously the 200 years that we have before when this took place and later on, you don't really know what is real and what is kind of embellished. But what we get from it is how he was treated. So at the end of his life, and I'm going to look up the quote here real quick, he is basically suffering from what one would consider to be old age. He's cold. He sits close to the fire, but the interesting thing is that women make fun of him, and they're servants. And so that's kind of taboo, and nobody does anything about it. So this is what kind of raised a flag for me and said something's going on. So he says, and this is a poem, I quote, "My head bobs like a bridled horse, it plunges badly in woe. My middle leg both droops and drips, while both my ears are dry." So it's a description of somebody who's old. You know, he's no longer virile, he's not able to have sex anymore, he's not happy, and women are making fun of him. So my take on that then is that he has gone from being a hero into being impaired, and I would even say entering in disability. The society has reacted to his impairments, which are age. Age is an impairment. It's a questionable impairment, but I take it as being an impairment, and they've actually reacted in such a way that they've thrown him out and allowed these servant women to make fun of him. All right, so the next one. We have Önünder from Gretti's saga. Önünder was a great warrior. And he is on a ship, and he's fighting, and somebody chops off his leg, but he continues to fight. And so, as a result of this, it's very quick. What happens? He continues to fight. They consider him great. But they repeat over and over again that he was as great a fighter as a person with two legs. And so as a result of that, that took me to the opposite side and said that he has to be within the realm of the idealized or the hero. And so I put him right smack in the middle and he didn't move. It didn't matter before he was a great warrior and after he was a great warrior. So he doesn't, in my opinion, move either way. He's static. All right. So now we have Oddny. And she was in love with a man named Bjorn. And they wanted to marry, but Thorder was Bjorn's friend and then turned enemy. And Thorder tells Bjorn that tells Oddny that Bjorn is dead. And so she agrees to marry Thorder. And then she finds out that's not true. And then Thorder ends up killing Bjorn. So then it is true. And so Bjorn's wife, who's not Oddny, another woman, gets very angry about this whole situation, and she sends something to Oddny to tell Oddny that that Bjorn has been killed. And Oddny falls into hold on, I have it right here. And she sees this it's a piece of jewelry that informs her that he's been killed. When she saw it, she sank down and lost all consciousness of those around her. And when the swoon lifted from her, she had fallen into a weakened health and great restlessness. Thorder tried many things to comfort her and treated her well. But her state became so severe that she was overwhelmed with suffering, which was especially painful for the first year. She felt most relief if she sat on a horse's back while Thorder led her to and fro. He did this because he thought it the most distressing situation and wanted to comfort her. So it's very interesting. He truly did love her. I mean, that's why he wanted to marry her and wanted to beat Bjorn out. But he does eventually admit that he wishes he would not have killed Bjorn because of the amount of pain that caused her. Now, this is another saga where it's been discussed. Actually, my advisor presents the idea that she becomes anorexic. She refuses to eat. I can't say whether or not that's the case, but I really think that she falls within the idea of disability. Her husband, Thorder, tries very hard to help her, but I just think that she has turned into such she's unable to take care of anything in her life. She's no longer useful to society, and it's only her husband who actually, people say it's a waste. You're just wasting your time with her. So I take her to be in the side of the disabled. All right, so this is a very interesting one. This is Hreidar from Hreidar's Þáttur. And so this is what it looks like in the singular, Þáttur. Hreidar comes from a good family. He's strong, slow, and does not fit into society. For me, it's very reminiscent of somebody who has autism. I don't want to say that for a fact, and I never will, but it very much to me, his strength, he's very good with details, he likes to carve. The interesting thing about this is he goes with his brother to Norway. His brother says to him, the people say to the brother, you should not have brought your brother here because he's just going to make a mess of things. And they make fun of him, they treat him badly, they tease him, they beat him up, and you feel really sorry for him. And then the king takes pity on him and realizes that he's very good with carving, and he ends up giving him an island. Now this is where it turns very weird, because like that, overnight, he turns normal. And he goes out and he gets married, he moves back to Iceland, and he lives happily ever after. And this is why I was talking about the idea of þættir being a little different than sagas, because this is the only instance where I've seen a situation where just instantly from one line to the next, he turns into a quote-unquote normal person. So I think it's very interesting, and I think there's a moral to this tale more than an actual repetition of what people thought happened back in the day. So here we have, he's moving from being disabled and impaired, made fun of by society, and he turns into this hero and ends up a very wealthy man with a big farm on Iceland. Okay, any questions so far? Am I speaking too quickly or? Okay, good. So I want to talk about the Christian view, and a lot of people take Egil, because Egil, from the first saga, the one who had what they thought was Paget's disease or something along those lines, he refuses to ever convert to Christianity. And so I wanted to juxtapose that against something else, and so I took this one, and this is from Grettir's saga. And it's a tale that Grettir himself has this dream. And this quote, I thought, kind of brought about the difference. So before, if you lost your ability to be useful, like with Egil, he was considered unworthy, and he wishes that he would have died in battle. This is where you see kind of a change. I'll just read the quote real quick. Then my good dream woman came in, and she said that this signified how many years I had left to live, and she advised me to stop following the old faith for the rest of my life, and to refrain from studying any charms or ancient lore. And she told me to be kind to the deaf and the lame and the poor and the helpless. And that is where my dream ended. And this is where you have the situation where it kind of changes from the you are the master of your own destiny, and if you are no longer able to take care of yourself, you should be wishing that you were dead, to actually helping other people who are in that situation. Interestingly enough, this is also one of 3 instances in the Sagas and Taitir of Icelanders where the word deaf is used. So there is absolutely no other discussion. The other 2 instances are people who at the end of their life lose their hearing, and one of them is Egil. So there's really nobody who suffers from the impairment of deafness. I don't know if it's because they were unable to take care of themselves, or they were unable to take part in society because there was no sign language, or a lot of people were not even literate, so they couldn't write back and forth to each other. But there is no discussion of deafness besides this and Egil, and one other instance where somebody is old and turns deaf. So, oddly enough, in Gisla Saga Surssonar, so I was wrong, actually. This is Gisli Saga, this not Grettis Saga. So Gisli Saga, this is the same saga, and a little bit later in the tale, you're presented with this situation, and this is actually a picture depicting it. Gisli is trying to run away from these men who are after him and trying to kill him. They end up catching up with him and killing him later on in the saga, but he and this woman are on this boat, and the way that they fool him is that he feigns disability to thwart his enemies. So he pretends that he's disabled. And despite this, he's considered to be a hero. There's no kind of making fun of him for having done what he did. I think in the contemporary context, people would have rather kind of at least made fun of the fact that he did that and he didn't stand up and fight. I think probably it was because he used his mind that they considered that a smart thing to do, but I'll read the quote from the text. "You will say," he told her, "that this is the fool on board, and I'll sit in the prow and mimic him. I'll wrap myself up in tackle and hang overboard a few times and act as simply and stupidly as I can. If they go past us a little, I'll row as hard as I can and try to put some distance between us." So then after they've left, he's going to try and run away. A bit later on, the text reads, "The men answered, 'We're having fun with the idiot,' and looked toward him. 'Look how madly he's behaving.' And then they said what a terrible thing it was for her to have to look after this fool." So we have Gisli here, and in this situation, I kind of grayed out the arrow because he's pretending to be disabled, but he's still considered to be a hero. So you have the X where he is actually standing, and then where they kind of put him. And you can see by the action, the words that they use are also, he says that he's going to pretend to be an idiot. And the word that he uses is fíbl in Icelandic. And it's not neutral. I would say it's a bit derogatory. But then when they say to him, they use the word fóll. And fóll is very derogatory. It's like a fool in English. And so they use a different word than he uses to describe himself. And so I think that also kind of presents, so you can get a little bit of an idea in these descriptions that fóll is much worse than fíbl. Fíbl actually I think would kind of equate to feeble-minded in English, where fóll would be just a fool. Yeah, and so here you have an example of the text. Let's see here. So fipl or fiflit is the instance. It's an inflecting language, so you have different endings depending on where in the sentence it is, just like with Latin. And then at the bottom you have fola, fotl. So because that she has to follow this fool around. Okay? Let's see here. And then I just wanted to show you. So basically how I collected these words was I read all of the Sagas and Taitir, and then every time I found an example of something that looked like an impairment, and sometimes it was just a short reference that I won't be able to actually use in my dissertation, I noted it down. And so we have the order. This is the order in which they go. There are 408 of them. I came up with key terms. There's age, arms, legs, different parts of the body, so that I could kind of keep things together, trying to find them thematically. Then there's the English word and the Old Norse word. So you have old age here and etli here. And then what it is, it's a term, evidentiary support, a nickname. There's a lot of nicknames. Iceland used a patronymic system, and they still do actually. So my name is Todd, my father's name is Peter, so my name would be Toddur Petersson. And so because of that, so that people could understand, they come up with these nicknames. And sometimes to the contemporary ear, they sound extremely cruel. From what I've gathered from Icelanders that I've interviewed, they're not actually considered cruel. They're kind of cute, even if they make fun of somebody in a way that we would consider maybe that's not so nice, like saying, oh, Paul idiot, but they think it's kind of sweet and cute. So then I have a bunch of things here, and that's kind of notes that I was going to make later on, and I can't show you here what I did, but it's basically were they positive, negative, can you get a connotation from it? And then the source, the sagas, when the sagas were written, is also included there. The volume in the English edition, so that I can look it up, the volume in the Old Norse edition, which is actually not here as well, the chapter number, the paragraph number, and the page number. And these are from the Icelandic edition. And then it continues. This is all thanks to Excel, my best friend. We have the English word right here, and then we have the quote from the text in the English paragraph, and then it's the same thing with the Old Norse word and the Old Norse paragraph. So I'm going to end right now and just say this is what I've found I can learn from it. So we have characters with physical impairments inhabit all areas of societies. Characters with cognitive disabilities, when statically located, so that's excluding Hraidar, the one who just miraculously got well, only inhabit otherness, so they're considered to be disabled. Fully understanding the cause of impairment is usually impossible to understand, especially when it's a cognitive disability. They didn't have the medical science that we have now. So a lot of times they would just say, he's simple. And what does simple mean? Does that mean that the person has some sort of actual cognitive disability where they injured in the head and it physically hurt the brain? Did they have some kind of sickness that caused damage to the brain? We'll never know. And so we can't fully understand, but we can better understand how people were treated. And then characters with physical impairments are judged just like other members of society on their ability and existence within the normal and ideal. So it's really what you could do that allowed you to be a hero or an outsider in the realm of physical impairments. Well, and so that's it. Thank you.